The yelling didn't start all at once. It built slowly, over days filled with small frustrations. A request ignored here, a delay there, a moment of disobedience that felt bigger than it should have. At first, the parent spoke calmly, repeating instructions with patience. But as the child continued to ignore or resist, the tone began to change. The voice grew louder. The words became sharper. It felt like the only way to be heard was to raise the volume. At the beginning, it seemed to work. The child would react quickly, stopping what they were doing, sometimes even rushing to follow instructions. But something else came with that reaction. The child's face would change. The eyes would drop. The body would stiffen. It wasn't cooperation. It was pressure. It was fear. Over time, even that stopped working. The child no longer reacted the same way. The yelling became normal, something expected, something that could be ignored after a while. The parent found themselves repeating louder and louder, trying to get the same response that once came so easily. But instead of improvement, there was resistance. More arguments, more tension, more distance. One afternoon, after a long and exhausting day, the parent called out again. "Turn that off now." The child didn't move. The voice grew louder. "I said turn it off." Still nothing. The frustration reached its peak. The parent stepped forward, voice raised, repeating the command with urgency. This time the child reacted, but not with cooperation. The response was slow, filled with attitude, followed by silence that felt heavy and uncomfortable. That moment felt different. It wasn't just about not listening. It felt like something deeper was breaking. Later that evening, the parent sat quietly, thinking about what had happened. The question kept coming back. Why doesn't this work anymore? The answer was not immediate, but it became clearer over time. Yelling doesn't teach listening. It teaches reaction. It teaches children to respond to volume, not meaning. And once they get used to the volume, the words lose their power. The next day, the parent decided to try something different. Not a big change, just one simple shift. When the moment came again, instead of raising their voice from across the room, the parent paused, took a breath, walked closer. The child was focused on playing, completely absorbed. The parent didn't speak right away. Instead, they gently placed a hand on the child's arm and waited. The child looked up. There was no tension in that moment, just attention. "It's time to stop and clean up," the parent said calmly. No yelling, no repeating. The child hesitated, as expected, but the resistance felt softer. The instruction didn't feel like pressure. It felt like guidance. The child slowly began to move. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't immediate, but it was different. This became the new approach. Instead of reacting quickly with frustration, the parent began to slow down, to pause before speaking, to move closer instead of raising their voice, to lower their tone instead of increasing it. At first, it felt strange, almost ineffective. The old habit of yelling was strong, especially during stressful moments. But each time the parent chose calm over volume, something shifted. The child began to respond earlier before things escalated. The arguments became shorter. The tension decreased. One of the biggest changes happened during a moment of refusal. The child said no. In the past, this would have triggered immediate frustration, a louder voice, a stronger demand. But this time, the parent stayed calm. "I hear you," the parent said softly. "You don't want to stop, but it's time." There was a pause. The child looked up, surprised. The response wasn't what they expected. There was no fight to push against, no loud energy to react to. After a moment, the child stood up. That moment showed something important. Children often match the energy they receive. When they are met with loud, intense reactions, they respond with resistance or withdrawal. But when they are met with calm, steady guidance, they begin to settle. Calm doesn't mean weak. It means controlled. It means intentional. Over the following days, the parent noticed something else. The child started using a calmer tone as well. During small disagreements, instead of reacting immediately, the child paused. It wasn't consistent yet, but it was happening. This was the real impact. Children learn behavior not just from instructions, but from what they experience repeatedly. If yelling becomes the main way of communication, children begin to see it as normal. But if calm, respectful communication becomes consistent, they begin to mirror that instead. One evening, during a small conflict over toys, the child became frustrated. The voice began to rise, but before it turned into a full reaction, the parent gently stepped in. "Take a breath," the parent said quietly. The child paused. It was a small moment, but it mattered. Instead of escalating, the situation softened. That was something that would not have happened before. The parent realized that yelling had been adding fuel to every difficult moment. It didn't solve the problem, it made it bigger. Replacing yelling with calm didn't remove all challenges. There were still difficult moments. There were still times when the child resisted or delayed. But those moments no longer turned into full arguments. They stayed manageable. The house felt different. Not perfect, but more peaceful. The biggest shift wasn't in the child alone. It was in the parent's approach. Choosing calm required effort. It required awareness. It required stopping the automatic reaction and replacing it with something intentional. But the results made it worth it. Respect began to grow naturally, not forced, not demanded, built through repeated calm interactions. Listening improved, not because of fear, but because of connection. The parent no longer felt like they had to fight to be heard, and the child no longer felt like they had to resist to be understood. The lesson became clear. Yelling may create quick reactions, but it weakens long-term listening. Calm communication builds something stronger. It builds trust. It builds respect. It builds cooperation. The next time frustration starts to rise, pause. Take one breath. Walk closer. Lower your voice. That simple shift can change the entire moment. Because children don't need louder voices. They need clearer, calmer guidance. Try this today. Hit subscribe. My future self will thank you.